Hey there, guys. Alright, today we are back with some more of the Great War, and spoiler alert, Italy is joining World War One. It's week 44. The Alpine front has opened up. Before we dive in, make sure you go and check out the links in the description box below. I'd love it if you joined the Discord and also followed me over on Twitch. Because, well, summer now, and streaming more often. So follow me. I'm playing Assassin's Creed 2. Actually, by the time this video gets uploaded, because I have quite a backlog of videos recorded and edited, I might already be done playing Assassin's Creed 2. Might be playing Witcher 1 by the time this gets uploaded. Who knows? It's a gamble. Go follow me on Twitch to find out what I'm playing. But yeah, now that that's out of the way, let's just go ahead and dive right into the video.
This month has been a blockbuster month in terms of actions and reactions all over the map, and this week is no exception. Remember last month when the Allies opened a new front at Gallipoli?
Yes.
Well, this week, yet another front opens as Italy joins the war.
Woo! Yay, more dev!
I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to the Great War. Last week, the Germans and Austrians had knocked back the Russians at the Battle of the San. The British lost 15,000 men to take 3 kilometers at Festubert. The Russians were advancing in eastern Anatolia, and Winston Churchill lost his post as First Lord of the Admiralty because of the failure of the Gallipoli landings. I'll jump right in with the big news of the week. On May 23, 1915, Italy declared war on the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Now, after the last few weeks, this doesn't come as a real big surprise, but still, amazing but true, the war keeps growing. Italy had been courting both sides for the past few months, looking to join the war purely for territorial gain. And with the Austrian military disasters over the winter, it had seemed like a good idea to join the Allies and take back some disputed territory.
What a model. Oh, look at that pose. The hand right above the hip. Oh, the leg positioning. Look at that feet positioning. Oh, the way he's got his head tilted in the same directional angle as his country's flag. Oh, what a stud.
From Austria-Hungary. But if you look closer, you can kind of see that the Italian army was not really prepared for European war.
Italy? Not prepared for war? Whoa! Who could have expected that? Italy? Unprepared for war? Oh, this is a travesty. No one could have predicted that.
And also still had big commitments in Libya, which it had taken from the Ottoman Empire in 1912. The Italians had really only occupied the Libyan coast and faced strong resistance from the local population, who basically refused to be colonized, and it took a lot of manpower to keep order.
Italy, the only country to have pretty much failures in colonization. Well, every nation pretty much dealt with some sort of failure when it came to colonization at some point in time throughout the long history, but obviously to simplify it, Italy is the only European nation that attempted colonization to where they pretty much are the only ones that failed.
But still, Italy mobilized 1.2 million men for war with Austria-Hungary, but only had equipment for 700 and something thousand.
Whoa.
Italy was not, at this time, a fully industrialized power, and had similar
I wouldn't even call Italy a power. Italy's Italy.
problems to the ones Russia had when the war broke out, with production, equipment, and training. Italy also didn't have much heavy artillery or mountain guns, which Italy would certainly need in the terrain along the border with Austria. In fact, the Italian front was...
So, did the Italians even do anything to prepare for this war that they clearly were planning to get involved in some sort of way or another? Like, alright, so Italy was going back, I don't think Italy was ever going to join the Central Powers. I don't think that was ever, I think it was a possibility, but I don't think, especially by now, that it was a real considered possibility. I'm sure the French and British worried about it becoming a possibility, but I think on the Italian side, maybe they might have. Obviously, they were what, trying to get an non-aggression agreement or whatever with Austria-Hungary. That wasn't an alliance. I think that's what it was. Or was it an alliance? I can't remember. But whatever it was, no matter which country Italy fought, France or Austria-Hungary, they would be fighting a mountain war. And Italy, knowing where they stood, knowing their leaders, knowing that they would be possibly joining a war, did not in any shape or way prepare for a mountain war. The only type of warfare that they would be facing should they join. Am I understanding this correctly, Italy? Are you that fucking stupid? You have somehow already made yourself seem way more incapable than Austria-Hungary. And you just joined the war.
Was probably the worst one for offensives out of all of the fronts. It was like 600 kilometers long, right? But 80% of that was mountains, many of them high mountains. So in winter you had snow, and wartime explosions could trigger avalanches. And in the summer, you had rock that couldn't be dug for trenches and splintered into shrapnel when hit. One of Italy's big tasks upon...
One of my favorite maps in Battlefield 1 was the Italian, Austro-Hungarian border mountain map. That was a fun map. I really liked that one. I also really liked the Ottoman one. I stopped playing. I play a little bit of their French maps. No, the French map was really good. Can't remember what the map was. It wasn't the siege one. It was the one where you are like in a farm and you're pushed back to a fortress. Can't remember what it was called. Grand Operations was such a really cool idea. Anyways, but yeah, the Italian one, there was a French one, and then I didn't get to play really the Russian expansions. So, yeah, Battlefield 1, pretty good game. Anyway,
entering the war was in the north to defend the Austro-Hungarian salient of Tyrol and Trentino and stop the Austrians from reaching the Venetian plains. But the most logical place for Italy itself to attack, even though it was going to be uphill, was the salient between the Dolomites and the Adriatic Sea. This was the quickest route to Trieste and Ljubljana. Now, there was some scattered action this week immediately upon the declaration of war. On the 23rd, the Austrians attacked in the Carnic Alps. On the 24th, Italy occupied Caporetto and Cormons, and within days captured Monte Altinino and occupied Grado and Alla. Austria-Hungary mounted a naval raid on the Italian Adriatic coast on the 24th and an air raid on Venice the same day. So that's the newest front. And if we look at the second newest front, at Gallipoli, we see that it was at a standstill. Much like on the Western Front, it had descended into trench warfare. But there was action there this week at sea. The German U-boat U-21 had traveled all the way from the Baltic Sea to the Dardanelles, and on May 25th, sank the British battleship HMS Triumph, and on the 26th, sank the battleship HMS Majestic. The other 6 British battleships there withdrew to safe havens, finally relieving the Turks from their constant bombardment. Also this week was a 10-hour truce between the Anzacs, the Australian and New Zealand troops, and the Turks, so the thousands of rotting corpses of soldiers festering in the sun could be buried. Now this was a shared moment of humanity between the Turkish soldiers and their enemy, but the Turkish government was being accused of lacking that very humanity. On May 24th, after an initiative by Russia, France and Britain joined the Russian government in condemning the Turkish massacres of Armenians over the past 2 months, saying it was, quote, against humanity and civilization, end quote. The Ottoman imperial government...
I really wasn't expecting to see that. I got the warning before clicking on the video. But I wasn't expecting that. Fuck.
Government would reply that it was practicing self-defense, and the responsibility for everything that happened in the Armenian districts was the fault of the Entente powers, who had organized and directed the revolutionary movement there in the first place. It seemed like humanity was lacking pretty much everywhere, though, including the Western Front. The Germans had begun using
Oh, that was a smooth transition, Indy. That was really smooth.
poison gas on the Allies in the ongoing Second Battle of Ypres weeks ago. But even though it was an almost unspeakable horror on the battlefield, it was still not proving effective at breaking the stalemate. On May 24th, a gas attack along a 7-kilometer front could not break the British lines, and on May 25th, the Second Battle of Ypres came to an end, as Allied forces pushed the Germans back nearly a kilometer over a front 3 times that length. The new ground came at a high cost. On that day, the attackers took 16,000 casualties to only 5,000 for the Germans. Now, the battle officially lasted till the 31st, with Allied total casualties around 60,000 versus around 35,000 for the Germans. A side note here, according to Martin Gilbert, Private J. Condon of the Irish Regiment died this week. At just 14 years old, it is believed that he was the youngest soldier to die on the Ypres salient during the war. So stalemate.
How did he get in? How did he sneak in? Dude had to look tall, right? How the fuck do you, as a 14-year-old, somehow pull off looking like an 18-year-old? I got a baby face. I shaved this. I look like I'm 14.
Continued in both the West and the Southeast, but one place where movement had returned to the war with a vengeance was on the Eastern Front.
And I'm 23. And I turn 14 when I shave. What?
The Russians were pushed back all week, and on May 25th, the Germans took 25,000 prisoners east of the River Seine. Actually, throughout the week, the Austro-German forces continued their seemingly inexorable march toward Przemysl Fortress, a symbol of Austrian military might that had fallen to the Russians 2 months ago
Military might.
after a siege of half a year. The attackers were now nearing the fortress from 3 sides, and the Russians were evacuating both the garrison within and its supplies. Hey, you want to hear something interesting about Russia?
Yeah.
On May 28th, there was a post in the London Times that said that between September 1914 and April 1915, state savings banks in Russia had monthly deposits of nearly £4 million average, right? But before the war, it was only around £100,000 a month. This 40 times increase in personal savings was ascribed to the total prohibition of sales of spirits. Russia might be losing in Galicia, but on other fronts, the Great Bear was fighting quite well. Up in Lithuania, they took Kindovary on the 27th in the Shavli district, and the following day took Bubiye. In Persia this week, they occupied Miandov, and in eastern Anatolia, occupied Vastan on Lake Van. Now, we've had several of you ask at times in the comment section what was going on with either China or Japan in the war. Well, this week, something was. On May 25th, 1915, those 2 countries signed a treaty. China agreed to open new treaty ports in Shantung and East Inner Mongolia, to lease Port Arthur for 99 years, not to convert the Han Yeping Company into a state concern without the consent of Japanese capitalists, not to allow establishment of any shipyard, coaling, naval, or military station under control of a foreign power or financed with foreign capital on the Fujian coast, and the former German colony of Kiao Chau was to be restored to China at the end of the war, having been occupied by Japan since November. And that was the week. The Russians winning on 2 fronts, but losing badly on perhaps the most important one. Gallipoli and the Western Front at a standstill, but at least the Turks getting some relief from constant British bombardment. And a new front, of course, as Italy joined the war. Italy had had commitments to Germany and Austria-Hungary before the war, and had reneged on them last year, claiming the aggressive nature of the Central Powers' action was a breach of the defensive nature of the treaty. But an alliance between Italy and Austria-Hungary wasn't going to be popular anyhow with the Italian population, who still harbored grudges over disputed lands. And attacking the empire when it was on its last legs seemed like a good idea, but this would backfire. German support had reinvigorated the imperial forces, and they now had a breather on the Eastern Front. Also, many disillusioned Austrian troops finally had an...
It's really interesting the system of alliances working in the Central Powers. I mean, also really with the Entente too, but when we look at it, Germany just a few decades ago was kicking Austria-Hungary's ass just like they kicked France's, right? In order to unify Germany, they had to beat up both France and Austria. And then Austria-Hungary is here teaming up with the Ottomans, who just a few centuries ago nearly took Vienna. It's just really interesting how that all works. And then of course the British and French, who historically this is like their one of the few times in history that they've worked together. It was this and what? The last time before this was the Crimean War. That was the only other time that they've pretty much really worked together, I want to say. I can't think of any of the medieval, late medieval wars, like, or during the colonial age. They were working together during, like, the Spanish succession or something like that. I don't know. Or Austrian succession, I can't remember. But yeah, it's just interesting how these alliances are turning out.
An enemy they could agree on, particularly the Slavic ones who weren't keen on fighting brother Russia or Serbia. Future Prime Minister David Lloyd George had this to say, quote, "If success was achieved on the Italian front, victory in the war was assured. A separate peace with Austria would then be predictable. And having eliminated Austria from the war, Germany would be at our mercy," end quote. This was, as ever, pure fantasy.
Yeah, what? Lloyd George, where are you? What makes you think that? Huh? I don't understand how he could even come to that kind of logical conclusion. What train of logic would he have to have followed to get to that conclusion? It doesn't make any sense. Germany's handling everything.
But the real and totally predictable result of Italy joining the war was this: hundreds of thousands more dead soldiers. So this week marked the end of the Second Battle of Ypres, but if you'd like to see the end of the First Battle of Ypres...
And that was the new Alpine front. Italy has joined World War I. Great War, week 44. I hope you guys enjoyed. Remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.